that Ghislaine Maxwell is getting, and the cover-up of the volumes and volumes and volumes of files under his watchful eye, that he ought not to be Attorney General. Nobody's screaming and hollering. I don't hear Rand Paul holding his feet to the fire.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really a good point that you bring up. But go ahead. I don't mean to allow you to allow me to digress.
Yeah. No. But this is another look over here. Ball hiding. Distraction. Political football. Enemy number one. But yeah, I think ultimately though, if we were to really do a deep dive on this, this wholly lies with the Chinese Communist Party with regard to how they suppressed evidence right out of the gate, how they shut down their whistleblowers and their doctors, even though some of these guys disappeared. Their wet markets, instead of allowing the WHO and its investigators to examine the evidence of those markets. They went in there and they cleaned house. They sanitized the markets. They shut everybody down, put everybody out of business, and that's massive evidence that wasn't allowed to see the light of day. And many have argued that as the Chinese people have risen economically, they've had more money. The middle class has risen to enjoy these wild exotic animals that are traded on these markets. I don't know if anybody's ever been to a night market in Asia or anywhere that you see the types of foods that are there and what they like to eat, and it's very plentiful. And there's a shame factor as well with regard to China and hiding this information. The massive reparations that the world would call upon for them to pay if in fact they could pin this down at their feet with regard to the Wuhan leak would be massive. I mean, even over here in our country, Gary, we've had lawsuits leveled against the country. A $24 billion judgment was upheld by a judge. I believe a couple of states like Missouri and Mississippi also sued. And then, of course, we saw what happened to the Australian government when they tried to hold China to account. They went ahead and tariffed the hell out of all their products and retaliated. And they took this response absolutely serious. And they used their own form of wolf diplomacy to scare other countries from coming at them. And so, Gary, I think ultimately the answers lie somewhere in the destroyed data by the government. They also erased and destroyed 22,000 viruses that were being researched. And so this is all stuff Fauci has had no control over. When the WHO investigators went over to Wuhan, they were bullied by the Chinese Communist Party. This is an authoritarian response to a national, international, massive outbreak. And they were forced to kind of like tone down their reports and not able to see all the evidence. So, Fauci just probably did what he had to do in the moment that he had to do them. And, look, at the end of the day, he's not God. He's not, he's just a scientist, obviously looking at the data like everybody else. And, these Republican senators, Rand Paul included, with their libertarian ideals, just saw a guy go rogue on the whole nation and shut down schools. And now he's the boogeyman. He's the face of all the bad things that we suffered through. And I don't know that you can pin that down on one guy, given the massive scale and severity of what it was we were facing. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the answers lie somewhere in China, and the Chinese Communist Party is not going to let that out or let that reach the light of day, in my opinion. But that's what we're dealing with when you're dealing with these authoritarian, autocratic nations that don't have to play by our rules, don't necessarily have to follow our science, our courts, when it comes to them having to be accountable for what they've done. I mean, we have the same issue over here, Gary, with regard to the size and scope of our corporations. One of the things I did not like about the rollout of the vaccines was granting these pharmaceutical companies immunity from lawsuits. If they're so confident in what it is they want me to prick myself with, well, then they should they should allow me to sue if I'm named by the actual vaccine. And I had friends who wouldn't take it for that very reason. I had friends who say, "Hey, man, if I get hurt and I can't sue, then I'm not going to do it. I'd rather roll the dice." So I think we learned a lot, Gary, from all.
See, that's funny. If I get hurt and I can't sue, I'm not going to take it. But if I don't take it and I get the virus and I die, I still can't sue. I can't sue.
Right. No, I know. I get it. I
mean,
it.
It's not a logical approach to it, David.
It's not logical for me, but these are the people that voted for Trump. So, and they view Fauci as enemy number one. Gary, I can't debate. You can't debate these people sometimes. I had a guy saying, "I'm all loaded up on ivermectin, and I'm going to take that drug if I get sick, and I know I'm going to be healed." So, so I mean, look, this is the problem when what we don't celebrate enough, Gary, and I appreciate Les bringing up the lives that can be pinned at Fauci's feet with regard to the HIV and others. But there's guys before him, Linus Pauling and the polio vaccine guy, was it Sauce? Jonas Salk. Yeah, these are guys, Gary, that had to run test after test until they finally got it right. And we all got vaccinated and growing up in middle schools and stuff, and nobody ever came down with measles, mumps, rubella, or polio. And now all of a sudden, this vaccine is the cause of all things autism and all these things impacting a lot of these children today. And so I think the narrative and the talking points are really outside the sphere of honest science now. I think we're in a whole nother basket case.
I think you're right. The politics have overtaken the science. Thank you, David. I'm going to move on because of the time. Thank you. Appreciate that. Linda, followed by Ben.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Gary. I was waiting for you to call me. I have long COVID, so I feel very passionately about this. I can't help it because of my experience. I got COVID in 2020, and it was before the vaccine was available to my demographic. So I got really, really sick. And I'm still dealing with lingering symptoms. Fatigue is the worst one, just as pervasive exhaustion. And I have an issue called POTS with my heart, where my heart rate beats very fast. My blood pressure drops at random times. So
I know exactly what that is, Linda. One of my best friends growing up has it.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you got it.
Thank you. So I've been dealing with long COVID for over 5 years now. And it was not due to the vaccine, it was due to the virus. I was very ill. But it did take a political turn. And I think that really affected people. I took some notes. I think one of the things was that the science was changing. And as public health officials and scientists learn more about the virus, this ever-changing information, I think it really confused people when they told people. I remember when they said, do not go out and buy a mask, you don't need a mask. And then, 3 weeks later, no, you need to get a mask, and there were no masks, and they had you making the makeshift masks. I remember people were advised to stock up on so much food in case you were to get sick and you couldn't leave the store. So it caused the panic buying, the vaccine mandates, the mask, mandates. But overall, I think Dr. Fauci, probably looking back on the whole pandemic, I'm sure there's things that he regrets or things he wish he could have changed, but the bell's already been rung. We can't go back in time. I think realizing that this virus was very serious, over 1 million people died here in the United States and millions of people globally, worldwide. I think people are very angry that they had to deal with the lockdown. I think they're angry that they missed this portion of their life. People are angry that they lost their jobs because they chose not to get the vaccine or whatever, or they're angry because maybe they lost their job due to COVID, probably had to get a different kind of job. I mean, it was horrible, the lockdowns, being in social isolation. I think people are angry about that, and they're wanting to come at Dr. Fauci. It's kind of like a witch hunt mentality. What I feel about Dr. Fauci is I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he did the best that he could. I think he worked in the best interest of the people based on the science as it was ever changing. I think Trump made the situation much worse because he was downplaying the virus, saying it would magically disappear by summer, calling it the Kung flu and the China virus, and making the joke that people could, inject bleach and all that stuff. And I think he made the problem worse. There was also 12 people. I don't know if you ever looked them up. They're called the Disinformation Dozen. And in fact, some of them are on Clubhouse, but there were 12 people in the beginning of the pandemic that were responsible for disseminating about 80% of the misinformation online about the COVID-19 vaccine. The last thing I want to say,
they were active on Clubhouse.
Yeah, they were. It was Steve Kirsch was one of them. I forget I don't know if Dr. McCullough was on there, but there were 2 or 3 of them that were on Clubhouse. But I know Steve Kirsch was one of them, and he was spreading a ton of misinformation about the COVID vaccines. With that being said, I don't wish anyone to get long COVID. It has been the worst experience of my life. It has cost me thousands of dollars in medical care, non-FDA approved treatments, herbs, just every kind of thing you can think of to try to get better. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, and also conventional medications, pharmaceuticals. So I really don't wish that upon anybody. And I would encourage you all to, get vaccinated because it does greatly reduce your chances of unfortunately getting long COVID. I also think Dr. Fauci could have said more about long COVID and could have warned people more about it, but he did speak on it. But at the same time, I think they were busy just dealing with the whole pandemic overall. But there are, millions of Americans still dealing with long COVID and still dealing with these side effects, and obviously the people that died. So I take this very hard. I very to heart. I take this very seriously. I'm very passionate about it, and I just think to sit there and try to take him on this hearing, I think it's a waste of time. And I feel like, him saying, pleading to the fifth or whatever to not incriminate himself, I think that's a smart thing to do. Also, I feel like maybe he feels, I don't know, I can't speak for him. I'm thinking maybe he's mine. Maybe he feels like, why do I need to explain myself to these people? We were living in a global pandemic. And I don't know if anyone could have done a better job of managing a global pandemic, because the last one we had that was global that created so much chaos was, I mean, there was like SARS, but that wasn't as many people. There was the flu, like the H1N1 and things like the swine flu, but that still didn't affect as many people. I think the major one before that would have been, there's like the polio scare, and then there was the Spanish influenza. I think that was the last major like global pandemic that caused chaos, and that was in 1918.
Yeah, that was the last major one.
So, what'd you say?
That was the last major one.
Yeah, so they made mistakes. I'm sure there were tons of mistakes made in that pandemic as well. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for your time, and I'm sorry that you're suffering from long COVID. I know somebody else who's suffering from it, and it's not fun. The Disinformation Dozen, I had not heard of them. According to the NPR, it's a group of 12 prominent online influencers identified by the nonprofit Center for Countering Digital Hate as being responsible for up to 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation shared on Facebook and Twitter, and I guess Clubhouse, during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And guess who one of those 12 is, ladies and gentlemen? I bet you Les knows. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Dr. Mitch, followed by Beth. Dr. Mitch, Dr. Mitch, Dr. Mitch. Short on time. Ben, followed by Lev.
Okay, so Gary, I guess were you not on Clubhouse in 2020 or 21? I'm sorry, I don't remember when you started getting on Clubhouse. Maybe you missed the golden age of Clubhouse, including some of those 12 people that are actually having large rooms spreading information that's incorrect. But anyway, just on that point, misinformation. I think it's one thing to spread misinformation, but it's a worse thing to spread disinformation. For example, some of those individuals that are asking people not to get vaccinated, they themselves got vaccinated. They were saying, "Oh, vaccine will make you worse. It's gonna kill you," or blah blah blah. yet they and their family members, kids and wives and husbands, they went to get the vaccine. It is really, to me, beyond just being ignorant, not understanding the science, and then ask people to be cautious about the vaccine. And there were quite a few of those individuals. Even individuals, I believe, that were probably even in government position. I don't remember who the names were, but certainly some powerful people that did that. Back to the topic of the room, I have quite a bit to say, but obviously it's late for you. I will make it short, but it's a very heavy topic. And even 2026, the amount of ignorance that's showing up on our general public, even in this room, it's just deafening. It's like the silence is, what is that phrase? The silence is deafening. I think I feel the same way. It's even more jarring to see Congress is actually coming down on Fauci. Whether Fauci did anything bad intentionally or unintentionally, I think historians will probably discuss that. But the lessons that we needed to discuss to learn is completely forgotten by these congressional powerhouse individuals. One of them would be if the government's response policies, whether there's anything that we can learn and correct ourselves in the future, not to repeat those mistakes. And when I say government, I think I include both Biden and Trump. There is so much information, so many lessons that we can learn. And now they're spending their time forcing Fauci to testify, having learned that he has the constitutional right to plead the fifth. By the way, as a legal nerd, I'm interested in learning whether the Supreme Court, whether the Justice Department would take up this case, meaning once one is granted a pardon by a president, one be forced to testify, or at least to be penalized if one does not testify under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. That legal issue, I don't have the knowledge of knowing now whether